Hi everyone, and welcome. Good evening. We're about to get started. We're just letting the last of you into the webinar itself. All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Amika Chalia, and I'm a campaign strategist at the ACLU of New Jersey. We're excited to be joined by our partners today for a webinar for the People's Agenda, which is a collective advocacy effort of 35 organizations across New Jersey to pass critical legislation during lame duck that will make New Jersey more accessible, affordable, safe, and welcoming for all who call it home. These organizations span across issue areas from statewide advocacy organizations focusing on voting rights, healthcare, and decarceration, to local organizations championing immigrants' rights, to grassroots groups mobilizing New Jerseyans to protect their democracy. All of them are united in a commitment to building thriving communities for all of us. As the Trump administration continues its attack on our fundamental rights and on the foundations of our democracy, strong state leadership is more urgent than ever. New Jerseyans are clear. They will fight back against authoritarianism, and they want elected officials who will unflinchingly stand up for their communities. And so this moment calls for the immediate passage of legislation that will expand and protect the rights of all New Jerseyans, as well as ensure that corporations and supermillionaires pay their fair share. That's why we're urging lawmakers to pass the People's Agenda and commit to prioritizing New Jerseyans and racial and social justice during this year's lame duck session. So we're so excited that all of you are joining us tonight. It means a lot that you're all coming out here to learn more about some of these priorities for lame duck, to hopefully get excited to be active during this session or to continue with longstanding activism that you may be participating in already. And to really work together, all of us, to make our communities stronger and healthier for everyone. So I'm going to go through the bills that we have on the People's Agenda so that you all have a little bit of background. From there, what we're going to do is go to each of our speakers who will be talking about one of the People's Agenda priorities, and then we will at the end have Q&A. If you'd like to submit a question for Q&A, at the very bottom of your screen in Zoom, there is a question and answer function, and you can actually go in there and type your question, and then we'll make sure at the end that we leave room to answer all of the questions. Now, there are 7 bills, as I mentioned, that are a part of the People's Agenda, as well as a priority generally, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure that everywhere in the state is paying their fair share in taxes. The first bill priority that we have is the Immigrant Trust Act, which is S 3672, A 4987, which limits New Jersey's involvement in the federal detention and deportation system and allows all New Jerseyans to seek protection and support from state and local agencies without fear of deportation. The next one is S 3009, A 4083, which is the New Jersey Voter Empowerment Act. Then we have S 3545, A 4696, or the Climate Superfund Act. S 3491, A 4656, which establishes protections for gender affirming care and abortion providers and patients. S 3452, A 4601, which ensures New Jerseyans are able to access affordable reproductive health care by eliminating cost sharing requirements for insurance coverage. S 2338, A 4463, which brings incarcerated elders home. And finally, S 2348, A 4175, which codifies and strengthens the protections against use of force. Now, please don't feel like you need to hurry to write these down, because we have action pages set up that have all the information. So we have a one-pager, and we will certainly share that with all of you so that you have access to them too. Before I pivot to introducing our first speaker, I just want to take a moment to talk about this particular moment that we're in, which is the lame duck session, and why it is that all of us are coming together to do what we can to pass critical legislation right now. The lame duck session is the period of time that occurs at the very end of our legislative session here in New Jersey. As you may know, a legislative session lasts for 2 years here, and the lame duck runs from the moment we finish the election in November to when inauguration occurs in January. And so it's a period of time that is, in some ways, the last opportunity to pass legislation that has been moving or advocated for the last 2 years before there's a complete reset within the legislature. And all of the bills, all of the priorities that we are discussing today are longstanding priorities that we and our partners have been working on for many years. And so this is an opportunity to make sure that we are really getting through the legislature and passed into law protections and laws that build access to opportunity for all of us. So with that, I am going to now pass to our first speaker on our first issue, and that's Adam McGovern, who is going to speak to us on the Immigrant Trust Act. Adam? Oh, Adam, you're actually on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Um, I yield back 3 minutes of my time. Ami, thanks for being here, and everybody, thanks for participating in this important gathering. The Immigrant Trust Act is legislation designed to make New Jersey a leader in pushing back against the Trump agenda of persecuting immigrant communities, protecting the safety and stability of our neighborhoods from indiscriminate and unaccountable federal intrusion, and proclaiming our value as a uniquely diverse state that points to the true roots and the best future of this country. It limits collaboration between local or state law enforcement and other government agencies and federal immigration authorities, based on the same separation in the U.S. Constitution. This ensures that undocumented New Jerseyans can report crimes, seek assistance, and access public services without fear of their families being separated or their loved ones or themselves imprisoned or deported. The ITA codifies the existing Immigrant Trust Directive, a current state policy, not a permanent law, which limits collaboration with ICE, prohibiting state and local law enforcement from using the resources our taxes fund to assist in the enforcement of federal immigration policy. It expands the ITD to include data protections for interaction with government agencies in general, encouraging immigrant communities to approach law enforcement when needed, reporting a crime, domestic abuse, workplace exploitation, etc., and to access public services, DMV, healthcare, schooling, etc., without fear of being treated as a presumptive criminal or penalized for doing the right thing for their society and family. And it eliminates exceptions in the ITD, not allowing undocumented people merely accused of both serious and minor crimes to be handed over to ICE and denied due process. It helps impede the infrastructure of the police state that Washington is testing out on people they think no one cares about so that they can apply it to all of us. But we do care. Caring takes courage, and we need to see both from our leaders in Trenton. We've seen it from the 26 towns and 4 counties that have passed resolutions calling for the ITA to become law. We've seen it from the city of Hoboken, which, when faced with a lawsuit from Trump over its sanctuary policies, responded by passing the Hoboken Trust Act just recently. And we saw it when the voters rose up to reject the Trump agenda with a clear mandate to resist its centerpiece of ethnic cleansing. The ITA has been declared dead several times by those who'd rather we all go away, but we haven't gone anywhere but Trenton. Every day the senators and assembly members are there, and the League of Municipalities conference where they all go, and their local offices week after week. Now nobody is talking about it not happening, and we have to make sure they keep talking to us and not water this down or rush through something that doesn't meaningfully answer to our communities. So I hope to see everyone here on this website in Trenton in person, and welcome anyone to get in touch with me about how we do make that happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. That was a really great call to action. I'm going to now pass to Melissa Marks, who's going to talk to us about the New Jersey Voter Empowerment Act.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much all for being here. Thank you, Ami. Thank you, everyone that has been working so hard to get us to where we are today. So I'll be talking briefly about the Voter Empowerment Act. We're here because the federal government has been dismantling the Voting Rights Act of 1965, right? It was already severely weakened in 2013, and now it's poised to be weakened even further, which will be a devastating blow to voting rights and our democracy. The Supreme Court is likely to rule against Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which protects voters by requiring that race be considered when drawing federal electoral maps. So with these federal protections at risk, it's more critical than ever for states to enact strong state-level voting rights protections. And that's what the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of New Jersey will do, a strong version of it at least. And so it's essentially a state voting rights act that would protect voters of color and strengthen our democracy by reducing barriers to voting, increasing language access and assistance, prohibiting deceptive practices at the polls, and ensuring that communities of color will have their ballots counted. So it's a bit of a complicated bill, but specifically a strong New Jersey Voting Rights Act would require a pre-clearance program that makes local governments with a history of discrimination prove that certain changes they make to the voting process will not harm voters of color before those changes can go into effect. It will provide new legal tools to fight discriminatory voting rules and procedures in court. It will expand language access for voters with limited English proficiency. It will include strong protections against voter intimidation, deception, or obstruction at the polls. It instructs state judges to interpret election law in a pro-voter way whenever possible. It would create a central database for election data and demographic information that will empower officials and communities to ensure accessible elections, and it will ensure local state voting laws, procedures, and regulations do not deny voters of color and other protected categories of voters the right to cast their ballot. So where we are right now is that this bill has been heard in 2 committee hearings in the Assembly already, state and local government and oversight, and it's sitting in Assembly appropriations waiting for that next committee hearing. We already have 39 sponsors in the Assembly, so there's a lot of support in the Assembly. In the Senate, unfortunately, we have not had a hearing yet, so we're really waiting for our legislators to allow us to discuss this bill in a committee hearing, and is sitting in the State Wagering and Historic Preservation Committee with 15 Senate sponsors. And so we need a stronger push from our leaders in both sides and particularly in the Senate. So yeah, really excited to work with you all to create that urgency and to get this important bill passed now.
Thank you, Melissa. And as Melissa's talking about where we are in terms of the progress of the bill, one thing that may be helpful to note is that when we talk about vote counts, it takes 21 votes for a bill to pass in the Senate and 41 votes for a bill to pass in the Assembly. I'm now going to pass to my colleague Amber Reed. She's with AAPI New Jersey, and she's going to be speaking to us about S2348, A4175.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ami. It's great to be with such powerful advocates tonight. The Use of Force Act addresses the cold fact that we've given police a monopoly on violence in our society. That's an extremely serious responsibility, and they don't always get it right. And when police do kill someone or use excessive force, it's really important that we have strong principles and guidelines, laws, I would say, to point to show what exactly they went, where exactly they went wrong, what they should have done instead. We became interested in this legislation after Fort Lee police shot and killed a young woman named Victoria Lee during her mental health crisis. And she was just one of over 50 that used deadly uses of force by police against people in New Jersey, many of them in mental health crises that have been documented over the past 5 or 6 years. You've surely heard of Deborah Terrell, Andrew Washington, Najee Seabrooks, and there are really almost too many to name. But in talking with other advocates across the country, I think we've realized how important it is to at least have what's called the Use of Force Directive in place, which was set in place by our current Attorney General. That does say there are some core principles that police need to be governed by in the use of force. And even when these principles are violated, it's really important that we at least have them to point to. But right now, this is a directive, so these principles could disappear with any future administration. I think they're too important to be left to be sort of arbitrarily decided. The people should decide, and this bill would codify them. So these principles include very sort of common sense principles like police have a duty to respect the sanctity of life, to prioritize other methods such as de-escalation, to use only reasonable, necessary, and proportional force. And there are other duties defined, like duty to provide medical assistance, and report the use of force. Police are required to report any use of force in a database that's accessible to the public. That's something we need to keep in New Jersey, no matter what administration comes. This also includes pretty strong guidance on how police should respond to barricaded individuals, including barricaded individuals experiencing mental health crises, and the additional supports that they should consider calling in that sort of case that's ended in deadly violence against people in mental health crises. Also importantly, it requires the Police Training Commission to move up training on responding to barricaded individuals and people in mental or behavioral health emergencies to basic training, because we're finding that by the time police do get to a point where they're being sent to de-escalation training, they've already had this basic training that sort of teaches them to react very quickly to situations, and that can lead to deadly mistakes. I think by moving that training up, we can have it sort of like more built into their basic training that these best practices of de-escalation and sometimes just walking away from things that they don't need to be involved in. So it really matters. Where we are now is unbearable, but I can't even imagine moving backwards on any of this. This legislation will ensure that we keep moving forward. It will offer the public more voice and visibility in use of force in New Jersey. Ensure that de-escalation and alternatives to use of force are taught in basic training and not later down the road, and all with the effect of increasing trust between the public and law enforcement and allowing everyone in New Jersey to access the support they need safely. This bill has passed the Assembly. It just needs to pass the Senate and be signed into law. And we hope that we'll have everyone's support here for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Amber. As Amber noted, that legislation is essential and long overdue. I am now going to pass to Charlene Walker of Faith in New Jersey, and she's going to speak with us about S2338, A4463.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlene, and I serve a God who is in the business of resurrection, a God who pulls life out of places this system has already pronounced dead. Right now, our laws in New Jersey are written like that resurrection isn't real. We live in a system that's cracked and cruel enough to look at human beings, people to whom the divine literally dwells, and decide that they are disposable. See, my faith says otherwise. We have a responsibility to see the divine in people and to honor it. One way we do that is by giving folks a second look. There are more than 950 incarcerated elders in New Jersey. Those are our uncles, our cousins, our aunties, our big sisters and big brothers growing old and sick behind bars. That didn't just happen. It is punitive sentencing laws and a broken parole system that has paved the road here. Medical release rules are so narrow that even seriously ill people can't get out. Mandatory minimums like the No Early Release Act have stacked on decades of time. And when folks finally become eligible for parole, the board still looks at what they did 30 or 40 years ago instead of who they are now. Then it stretches out the time between hearings so far that our elders are literally left to await death in prison. And that's not right, y'all. It is beyond horrific that our legislators have decided that prisons built to punish are now under-resourced nursing homes that weren't designed to heal anybody ever. They were built for punishment. This is a recipe for the harshest of cruelties. And the data actually exposes the lie. People 50 and older have a recidivism rate of less than 1%. These are not the folks that are keeping us unsafe, as they want to say in unfortunate messaging. But it costs around $74,000 a year to incarcerate one person, beloveds. One person. And when you add serious medical needs to that, that shoots well over $500,000 a year. To warehouse somebody's grandparents until they die behind bars, Even folks who normally clutch their pearls, struggling to see God's beloveds fully and reject shortening sentences, can look at $500,000 per elder per year and say, okay, that's just ridiculous. So enters S 2338, A4463, the Rehabilitative Release Act. That bill says if you've lived long enough, served long enough, and done the work to change, the state must take a second look at your sentence. This isn't something that's radical. It's actually late. And honestly, it's embarrassing that in 2025, we are still debating whether our elders deserve a second look. Every day we wait, that hope is being dimmed for so many. So here's what the bill actually does, right? If you're 60 or older and have served at least 20 years, you can petition to court for resentencing. For the most serious offenses, you must be 62 or older and have served at least 30 years. And the Department of Corrections will issue a certificate of eligibility when someone meets that criteria. This certificate, honestly, for me and for all of those that I love that are behind the wall, it's a little piece of hope for families that are impacted and our loved ones waiting to finally be seen as the whole person they have become. Our office of the public defender, they actually get to represent folks. So people that are eligible that don't already have a lawyer, they get some support in this process. And to be resentenced, people have to show proof of rehabilitation. That's programs and therapy, disciplinary records, evaluations, community support, reentry planning. Judges still hear from victims and survivors. This is restorative. They still weigh public safety, and if someone is released, they are under 5 years of parole supervision. This isn't a free pass, but it is mercy, and it is mercy with guardrails. And it's not just us, those that know and love those, our kin that are behind the walls that are backing it. This is New Jersey's bipartisan Criminal Sentencing and Disposition Commission. They named this as their top priority themselves to reduce the racial disparities and correct the excessive sentencing. This bill is supported by the Department of Corrections, the Public Defender's Office, the Attorney General's Office, and the Governor's front office. Across party lines, we know as people, we can see that this makes sense. Other states from DC, including DC, have done this. This is just common sense. This is fiscal sense, and it is spiritual work. We cannot shout about grace and new mercies on our days that we celebrate and practice the holy, and then write a policy on a Monday that says you are forever the worst thing you did at 19. If we truly believe the divine lives in people, our laws should make room for transformation. We do not turn our backs on our loved ones, not on our elders, not on the people we pray for, visit, write letters to. Giving them a second look is one way we say we see God in you. We will not throw you away. This bill is one piece of the people's agenda, our vision for a New Jersey that chooses healing over cages. But it won't move just because it sounds good and because it's right. It moves when we move. So here, I want to also ask that we have a statewide sign-on letter going to every member in the New Jersey legislature demanding that we pass the Rehabilitative Release Act. If you haven't signed it yet, I'm asking you lovingly, firmly, please do so now. We'll have the information so you can scan it and you can hit our QR codes, follow the Second Look New Jersey Instagram to find links so that you can take action. This is about mercy. This is about hope. This is about treating our people like they're not disposable, but that they are family and giving them the ability to be welcomed home, to have redemption, and to be restored. So let's move this for signatures and let's show our people, all people, what it means to love each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. I'm always so inspired by you and when you speak on this. I just want to do a quick reminder for everyone that we are having a Q&A in the end. So if you'd like to add a question, you can do so at the bottom of the screen in the Q&A function. I'm now passing to Jamie Thal from UU Faith Action. She's going to be speaking with us about S3452, A4601.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. We have a lot of work to do between now and January, and I'm really heartened to see so many people have signed on to the webinar today. I'm here tonight representing UU Faith Action. We affirm the right of all people in New Jersey to bodily autonomy and the freedom to make their own healthcare decisions. Tonight, I'm speaking out in support of 3491, A4656, which protects access for people seeking reproductive health care here in New Jersey. Reproductive health care naturally includes abortion care and gender-affirming care. Abortion care is health care. Gender-affirming care is health care. And health care is a human right, and the decisions we all make about our own health care are deeply personal ones. Not only are we all entitled to receive the care we need, we should also be able to access that care without fear or intimidation. Our dedicated healthcare professionals are also entitled to provide that essential healthcare, to do their jobs without fear of harassment. Even with our current robust protections here in New Jersey, many people seeking healthcare here are regularly confronted by protesters outside healthcare facilities. I'm a clinic escort, and I see firsthand the harassment and the intimidation that takes place on a regular basis. Nationwide, we know abortion care and gender-affirming care are under attack. Today, as many of you know, is the Transgender Day of Remembrance, when we honor the lives of transgender people who have been lost to violence. We must also honor them by taking bold action here in New Jersey without delay. This legislation will provide robust protection for people entering healthcare facilities so that when protesters are outside, they are no longer allowed to intimidate folks from entering a facility. This also provides protection against videotaping. Many protesters now use cameras in order to make patients feel uncomfortable about seeking the health care they need and desire. We need this legislation to protect our providers, our patients, and our volunteers out on the sidewalk. So we at UU Faith Action are demanding that our leaders in Trenton pass this legislation without delay. We must act immediately to ensure that access to reproductive health care, including gender-affirming care, including abortion care, is protected by law. Access to health care is a matter of health, it's a matter of safety, it's a matter of religious freedom, and most importantly, it's a matter of justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Apologies. We are now going to move to Amy Goldsmith of Clean Water Action. She's going to speak with us about the Climate Superfund Act.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me and to be part of this really great People's Agenda. I'm going to focus on the Climate Superfund Act. It's S3545, A4696. Basically, what it does is it raises new revenue from people who haven't been paying up. And those are the big oil and the big gas companies that have caused the climate damages in the state of New Jersey and around the globe. And New Jersey's the 5th highest per capita spending state in the nation for climate damage since 2011. And the big polluters have not paid a dime for that. We have paid that with our families, with our lives, with our homes, loss of community, loss of infrastructure. And what they would do under the Climate Superfund, which would be to pay $50 billion over the next 20 years based on this number is based on their greenhouse gas contribution in the state of New Jersey. That money would come to the state. It would go out in the form of grants to municipalities and others for adaptation, resiliency, upgrading infrastructure, energy efficiency, and other measures that are needed. It's a make polluter pay legislation so that taxpayers in the state and families are not paying. It's a way to protect people who have been largely unprotected, especially our most vulnerable and people who have the least resources to recover. And some people still have not recovered from Sandy and never will, or Irene, or Floyd. Just think of a name and you'll probably come up with a hurricane that somebody has been dramatically infected. It's not just the Jersey Shore. It's inland, it's Plainfield, where people have lost their lives. So right now, we are organized as a coalition. We have 150 members of our coalition. Clean Water Action is a leader of that effort. There are over 127 local elected officials who have signed a sign-on letter. We're looking for more mayors and council members to sign on. You can go to our website and find that. We have over 56 local resolutions and 2 counties, both Hudson and Essex County, that are in support of Climate Superfund and have officially gone on record. We have a growing number of legislative co-sponsors. Right now, we have 40 in the Assembly, so we almost have a majority. We need just one more to get to the majority, and 17 in the Senate. So it's currently in Senate Budget and Appropriations, and in Assembly, it's in the Commerce Committee. And we have great leadership, from the committees and from McKeon on the Senate side and Allen on the Assembly side, but we need to push Coughlin and Scutari to let the rest of the process work, and to let what we're now getting to close to a majority in each of the Senate and the Assembly to support it. This is something that has been passed in New York. It's time for us to pass it in New Jersey, and to similar to what the tobacco industry and the opioid industry did to all of us. They knew their deceit, they knew the damage they were doing, but they made us pay and our families pay. So this is in keeping with the tradition of making those most accountable and people who knew early on, like tobacco and opioid. Now it's time for big oil and gas to pay, and Climate Superfund will do that. And it's really so important to be part of the people's agenda, because it's a way to take the burden, the harm, the cost off the backs of people and this state, from people who have the least resources and the least capacity, including our towns and communities, to recover and to take a different path. So we're really excited, and we think we're really close. So if you know a local elected official who could sign on, you can go to the Clean Water Action website or contact me. And also, if you have a legislator that you're not sure is on the list and a co-sponsor, you can contact me as well, and we can find out for you, because every day we're adding new people to the list. So thank you, and I'm so proud and honored to have us part of the People's Agenda.
Thank you so much, Amy. On the topic of everyone paying their fair share, I'm going to introduce my colleague Antoinette Miles from New Jersey Working Families Alliance, and she is going to talk to us about the importance of revenue raisers.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So great to be amongst so many advocates in our state, and so many of you who are putting the people first as we round out the end of this year in our legislative session. Next week, many of us will gather with our families, our friends, our chosen families and loved ones for a Thanksgiving meal. And frankly, we know that that meal on the table is getting more and more out of reach for so many of us, and frankly, out of reach for even more. New Jersey families are frankly stretched thin and every day struggling to make ends meet. We know that costs are up across the board, including groceries, energy, housing, transit, and New Jersey is facing its own fiscal crisis of its own. Our state is operating with a $1.5 billion deficit, and we're already struggling to respond to the affordability challenges that families face. In June, lawmakers continue the very long tradition of kicking the can down the road instead of rising to meet the moment in our state budget. They did not plan for the full brunt of the federal cuts coming down the pike. They raided clean energy funds and affordable housing funds. They threatened public workers with higher health premiums while giving out corporate subsidies to companies like Netflix and AI data centers. And then, of course, we know we had the not so big, beautiful bill that passed this summer at the federal government. And all these problems were made worse by giving huge tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations. We cut food assistance in healthcare for so many and shifted even more costs back to our state governments. We have frankly been borrowing from our future to pay for it, and our elected leaders at the federal and state level have been doing that. And so while we cannot stop all of the chaos that's happening in Washington, we cannot backfill every federal cut. We know that New Jersey is a state where we have a lot of high wealth, and there are concrete steps that we can take to protect families and reduce inequality. We know that 1 in 8 children in our state live in poverty. There's key public investments like our schools, transportation, municipal services that have faced decades of underfunding and disinvestment. And this is the time in which we can start to reverse those trends. This is the moment to address tax fairness, as more revenue will be needed to improve affordability for all of our state's residents. And so we are calling for in this lame duck session to reform New Jersey's tax system and reduce income inequality and provide real revenue that is needed for public investments to make our state more affordable. We have 2 ways to do it. One is to tax super millionaires. We're calling for the introduction of new tax brackets for the highest income earners with rates of those earning over 2 million, 5 million, and $10 million. The second way we do it is to hold corporations accountable. These very same corporations that just got a huge windfall from our federal government. We want to make sure that those companies who are getting their profits are not simply moving their profits overseas and draining our state budget of millions and potentially billions of dollars annually. And taken together, these reforms will generate the resources that New Jersey needs to counteract Washington's budget shenanigans and invest in services that families depend on. Again, the ultra wealthy and corporations already got the biggest handouts from Washington. Now is the time for New Jersey to step up and make sure families get the protection that they need. We are doing that in coalition with a number of organizations that are here, as well as the For the Many Coalition, which is more than 40 organizations with unions, community groups, advocates from across New Jersey, and we're ready to work with the legislature to pass these reforms. But we know that this fight won't be easy. We know that there's not often political will to move forward on these things, but there is a mandate to address affordability in New Jersey. And so that must be answered with bold solutions that put forward bold solutions to the problems that we need. One of the things that we are encouraging people to do is to make sure that they show up for the in-district visits as well as the rally. You will hear more about calls to actions later, but we want to make sure that lawmakers are hearing about this from all of our communities. There are no bills or legislation that has been introduced for this, and so we are demanding this anew in the same way that we won many years ago a millionaire's tax in this state where nobody thought it was possible, when there was no political will. I believe that we can do this again. Otherwise, we will be continuing to stare down more and more cuts, more harm to our families, and reductions in state services that so many of us rely on. I believe that we can do this together and by making sure that the wealthiest and the well-connected among us are paying their fair share, period. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. As she mentioned, it's so important, right, that we all are part of this effort and that we can work together to make sure that we're getting essential protections across the line. I'm going to pass now to our last speaker, Roxanne McNellis of the Cherry Hill Women's Center, who's going to be speaking with us about the reproductive insurance bill.
Good evening, everyone. So glad to be here with all of you. Ooh, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate your attention to these important issues. For the last 15 years, I've been really proud to work with Cherry Hill Women's Center, a cornerstone of reproductive freedom here in New Jersey. And every day we see a reality that too often gets overlooked. Even though abortion is a fundamental legal right here in our state, far too many people still cannot access the care that they need. We all deserve to make decisions about if, when, and how to grow our families. And those decisions should never be tied to someone's ability to afford healthcare. Yet, New Jerseyans are navigating a healthcare system that is increasingly unaffordable, inaccessible, and inequitable. Financial barriers continue to push care out of reach, especially for communities of color, immigrants, LGBTQIA+ people, and those with low incomes. Copays, deductibles, and other out-of-pocket costs force too many people to delay care, go without it, or make impossible trade-offs. A4601 S3452 begins to dismantle these barriers. This bill requires that health insurance plans cover the full range of reproductive health care services, including abortion, without any out-of-pocket costs. It ensures that any pregnancy-related care funded or administered by the state includes the full spectrums of services available. And it protects providers like us who deliver this care by codifying scope of practice regulations and prohibiting malpractice insurers from penalizing clinicians for offering legally protected health care, including abortion and gender-affirming care services. At its core, this bill is about equity and justice. Across the country, millions of people are being stripped of the basic right to make decisions about their bodies and their lives. New Jersey must lead by making sure reproductive health care isn't just legal, but truly accessible and affordable for all. Because the gap in abortion access is a racial and economic justice issue, and dismantling those inequities is essential to true reproductive freedom. And that's why A4601 S3452 is a key pillar of the People's Agenda. It reflects our connectivity and our collective commitment to health, safety, and autonomy, and to building a New Jersey where everyone can make decisions about their future with dignity. So I'm asking all of us, advocates, organizers, and community leaders, to raise our voices and push this bill across the finish line. Let's make New Jersey a place where reproductive health care is not only legal, but truly within reach for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne. You spoke so powerfully to the importance of making sure that healthcare is truly accessible for everyone. We are now going to talk about calls to action and what all of you can do to make sure that we can get these really important pieces of legislation over the line during lame duck. As you've heard from all of the speakers, every single one of these bills is urgent. They speak to important longstanding needs in communities. And if and when they are passed, New Jersey will be a safer, healthier, more affordable and accessible place for all of us. And so what can all of you do to help get all of these bills passed into law during lame duck? So there's a couple of actions that we have planned as the People's Agenda, and we would love for all of you to join us in them. The first one coming up is going to be on December 2nd, which is an in-district day of action, where we are going to be going to every single legislative office in the state with a package of materials that explains the importance of every single bill and a strong call to action. And we would love for all of you to join us at the district offices. You'll see a link in the chat that my colleague just included where you can sign up to join us. And this is so important, right? Because oftentimes we go to Trenton and we testify on bills, or we may have rallies, but it's important that as we do that, we are also making sure our voices are heard in district locally. And so we would love to have you join us if you can. As I noted, the link is in the chat. We will also have an additional training that you can attend if you would like to learn more about how you can be involved that day, and just the do's and don'ts and how to engage your lawmakers when you are doing that outreach. The next event coming up after that is on December 8th, and that is a rally and lobby day in Trenton at 11 a.m. And we would love for all of you to join us for that. All of the people who you see here are going to be there that day, along with, as I mentioned, the 35 other partners that we have as part of the People's Agenda. It's really powerful to make sure our voices are heard in Trenton, especially during this period as things move quickly. And as I noted in what is one of the last moments that we have of this legislative session, to make sure that these important priorities are passed. So those are two of our in-person actions that we have coming up. I just also want to note that we have an action page live as well, where you can actually email your lawmakers, email leadership in the Senate and the Assembly and the governor, and let them know that you want them to quickly advance and pass these critical bills to make sure that we are really living up to our values as New Jerseyans. And so, in addition to joining us on those in-person actions on December 2nd and December 8th, we hope that you will also share this action page far and wide with your friends, your neighbors, someone you meet on the street, so that we can make sure we're letting our lawmakers know that we want them to pass these bills. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. I am now going to open us up for Q&A, and I'm going to ask all of our speakers to come back on the screen and join me. Yay, okay, I'm so glad everyone's back. It's so nice to see everyone. It's a reminder of how incredible this collective effort is, right? That we're here together and able to advocate. I see that we have a handful of questions here, some of which have already been answered. I am going to see if anyone here sees one that you'd like to answer, please feel free to do so. But I'm going to start here, which is, what happens to any bills that don't pass in lame duck? Would someone like to answer? That's not going to be the case for any of these, but I understand the curiosity of wanting to know.
Sure, I can do that. So, a lot of times, legislators have a bill, and if they're not sure it's going to get over the finish line, they pre-file for next year, which is the next legislative session, and starts right after they're sworn in. The new legislature is sworn in January, and you start the whole process all over again. So if you got, lots of sponsors, you got through a number of committees, you're going to have to potentially go through a lot of committees again and go through a vote. So if you don't pre-file, it's not the end of the world, but you get out of the gate a little faster.
Thank you, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked us a question. This is a terrific but large list. Do they all have equal priority, or will they be listed in order of priority? Would someone like to answer that one?
I can get it started. I would just love to say, I think these bills it's a large list, but the list of bills that this coalition of organizations is trying to move forward and has been working on during these legislative sessions are actually much larger. The bill that I talked about tonight and the bill that Jamie talked about are actually part of a 9-bill package called the Reproductive Freedom and Health Equity Bill Package. And I know that, organizations that are here are equally excited about moving all of these bills. I will also say that the Immigrant Trust Act is a bill I think that came up on a top of priority list for so many of the organizations. And although it's not not a bill that, as reproductive health providers we work directly on, it's something that we see come up for the patients that we serve and the communities that we serve each and every day. We talked about the criminalization and the risk and the threats that are coming up, but there is a chilling effect for our immigrant populations when the care that they are seeking is being criminalized and their identities are being criminalized. So we see that issue not just as something that is siloed and important for immigrants, but is also key to reproductive health rights and justice. But I'm sure others have thoughts on that as well.
I think Roxanne answered that so perfectly, but I think to her point, right, I think it speaks to how intersectional all of these bills and all of these issues are, right? When we talk about making sure there's protections for voting and protections for immigrants and protections that people can access their healthcare and have a clean environment and make sure that there's enough money in our budget to pay for the priorities that people really need, it's all speaking to the same issue, which is making sure that people have the ability to really live full lives, that they can feel belonging in their community, that they can have access to opportunity for themselves and for their families, and that the New Jersey that we want for ourselves is the New Jersey that we can have for everyone. And so we really hope that you can join us in making these bills real, because they come from a place of not just the organizations that are on the call and not just the 35 organizations that are in the People's Agenda, but from so many members and volunteers and community members who have made clear that these protections, these bills are essential.
Yes, and I just want to add to that, right? I want all of us to embrace the fact that our legislators could pass each and every one of these bills. Hands down, they can pass the things that are the big, bad, and nasty that hurt us in 2.5 seconds, right? This whole legislative process, every last bill that's on here can easily be passed. And we as the people have a responsibility for reminding them that they have that capability and not budging behind it, saying that this is what the people need, the people deserve, and we need you to do your job. And I really want us to really land right there when it comes to this.
Thank you, Charlene. Marie has asked, Antoinette spoke about aspirations for tax fairness legislation. What steps need to happen for legislation to be introduced for these super millionaire taxes?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. And also good to see Marie. I know Marie. Shout out to South Jersey. Um, but yes, so I think first, we do need a champion, right? This doesn't start without us having a voice in the legislature that is willing to push this forward, and willing to bring this up. And look, we know that during lame duck that there's hundreds of bills that are flying. There's often not a lot of time to be able to galvanize, but we do think that this is the moment to at least plant the seeds and make the demand, so that we can continue to push. We know that New Jersey's fiscal future is not going to get any easier. In fact, it's going to get harder. And the next fiscal year, frankly, we know that the incoming legislature, which will have a Democratic supermajority, as well as the governor-elect, is going to have to make a lot of tough choices. And so we are calling the question right now is that, why don't we take this opportunity to actually do what we need to do, to be responsible and to make sure that we can get on that path. But yes, we do need a champion in the Assembly. We need a champion in the Senate that is willing to push this forward, so that we can begin to have momentum to get towards real legislation, to put this forward. But now is the time for us to set the tone and to set the narrative about tax fairness and tax justice.
Thanks, Antoinette. I see a couple of questions here related to process and understanding where things are in the legislature. So I'm going to put both of them out and people should feel free to answer. One is there an easy way to see where our own Assembly and Senate members stand on each of these bills all in one place? And we have a second question that says, what is the next step after the required number of senators and Assembly sponsors are reached for each bill on the People's Agenda? Please explain next steps.
Like I could start, just not to tell you a depressing story, but I will tell you one. My organization got a Safe Playing Fields Act bill written. We had a majority in the Assembly and in the Senate. We had clearly enough votes because everybody was a co-sponsor. We had a majority of co-sponsors in both the Senate and the Assembly. And because the leadership, meaning the Speaker and the Senate President, did not want to post this, it would have protected kids from pesticides on playing fields. The bill did not get heard, and it didn't get voted on the floor. So it went through all the committees, it had all the sponsors. So, just because you have a majority of sponsors, in one house, in the Assembly or the Senate, does not guarantee anything if you can't get Coughlin and Scutari to actually post the vote on the floor. So It's a little depressing, but it's also the reality of the world. I think you had another question in there, but you asked about where do you find the co-sponsors and where they are. If you just Google New Jersey legislature, it'll pop up and you can put in the bill number, or if you're not sure what the bill number is, but you know the committee or you don't know the committee, you can put up the sponsor. If you don't know the sponsor, you can put a keyword. And sometimes it's a little harder to find, but if you have the bill number, it'll pop up and you'll see who the sponsors are. Now, we've just added a whole bunch more sponsors just this week for our bill, and it's not up yet. They don't update that until a quorum session happens, and then they update whoever just recently signed on. So you might not always find the most up-to-date version of a bill, and you might not always find the most updated list of sponsors, but it's a good heads up, and it will tell you what committee it went through already, and if there was a vote in committee and where it's going next. So it's a good place to go.
Thanks, Amy. And I think what Amy
Sure.
shared speaks right to the importance of sustained pressure. It's not just about getting a high count on sponsors. It's also about making sure your bill is actually heard in committee. It's about making sure a bill gets to the floor and has enough votes to pass. And so there's a lot of different steps it takes to actually get a bill to the governor's desk. And then you have to make sure the governor actually signs the bill. And so the pressure is never ending. And that means we have a lot of work that we have to do during this lame duck period to make sure that bills that we know people across New Jersey want, that they have long been asking for, are actually passed. And that's why we're really appreciative that all of you are on the call, right? Because this is not something that a handful of us can do alone or that a few organizations can do alone. This is something that really requires all of us to chip in and make sure that we have a state that's really serving all of us. Okay, I see a quick question I'm just going to answer right here, which is that yes, we're happy to have other people sign on to the People's Agenda. If you would like to, I will email you after, and that way you can get in touch with me. And Gil, we are going to answer your questions in the chat, so we'll get to you shortly. We have a question here about when we call our elected officials, what should we ask for? Is it a yes vote? If and when these measures come up for a final vote, is it co-sponsorship?
So I can answer that and marry it with the next one that's asked by the same person. So right now, what we really need, most of these bills are stuck where they need committee hearings. So our ask needs to be that they need to call leadership. So that is Assemblyman Scutari, the Speaker, or Senate President. Senate President Scutari, the Speaker Coughlin, and also the committee chairs. We want our legislators, even if they are sponsors, to continue to be calling and saying, hey, my people want this to be moved, right? That this is necessary right now to be heard and to be moved. And if you aren't a sponsor, yes, please do sign on, but I need you to actually continue to apply pressure because it will not move if it does not get a committee hearing. And that goes with the second question, which is saying, about them being stuck in, it was like most of these measures are stuck in committees. Should we reach out to the committee chair? So yes, the committee chairs as well. And it's always, we need this to move, get the committee hearing so that you can make it to a vote before lame duck is over. And if you have a really good relationship with any of your legislators where you have met with them, ask them, hey, how do you think that we can get those people to actually move? And then please be in touch with all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. We have a question here about, I guess, just generally about the inclusion of why certain bills are in the People's Agenda. And so I will just say, as was noted earlier, all of the organizations around the table are working on a number of bills. And so while these 8 priorities are named as part of the People's Agenda, across the advocacy space in New Jersey, there's a number of priorities. And so you may have heard of just one bill on voting rights, but I can assure you there's a number of bills out there to make sure people have access to their democracy, that they have access to healthcare, that they have access to immigrants' rights and civil liberties and criminal legal reform. And so just please note that we're really active around all of those bills and also welcome support on all of those bills. Okay, do we have any additional questions? Oh, and I'm going to add, if I could, Melissa, do you mind just reminding everyone of the dates that we have of our upcoming actions? And while you do that, I will pop one more question into the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks everyone so much. I hope that you feel comfortable, at least a little bit more comfortable with these bills, being able to talk high level about them. Another thing I'll just say quickly, some advice, like when you're participating in these district drop days, you do not have to be an expert. If you even get to talk to a legislator, they're not expecting you to know every detail. They probably don't know anything about the bill themselves. So don't put pressure on yourself. It's okay. Just knowing the high level, knowing the talking points, being prepared to say, look, I support this. This is urgently important. That's all we're really looking for you all. And then, of course, if you do want to know more, you can always follow up with us, and we're happy to have those deeper level conversations. But the dates that we would love to have you all involved in helping us create an urgency and push these bills are December 2nd. That's the big district drop day. We really need help. That's our big grassroots call. We need folks all over the state on that same one day. So please, if you can only do one thing, I would encourage you to go to your go to your districts and participate in those district visits on December 2nd. And so definitely fill out that form to say that you'd like to participate. When you fill out that form, you'll see we're also having a quick refresher office hour training the day before on December 1st. So you can sign up for that, and we'll make sure you feel comfortable and prepared at that point. And then we're doing a lobby day in Trenton at the State House on Monday, December 8th. So more info and sign up to come for that, but definitely, save your calendar now if you can. And I might as well just speak for everyone and say there might be more. We don't know if our bills aren't passing. We will definitely continue to put up the pressure. So keep an eye on your emails. Don't hesitate to reach out, follow up, and we're really excited to work with you all. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Melissa. As Melissa said, she, I think, closed us out beautifully, but thank you so much for joining us this evening. We know that all of you could be doing something else with your time. And so it means a lot that you are instead using that time to join us and also to be an active voice in your community. So we hope that we see you on the 2nd of December, on the 8th of December, but also that we continue to work together to make sure that not just that we pass these bills in lame duck, which we will, but also that we continue the work over the next few years together to make sure we're passing legislation that will definitely make our communities stronger and brighter for everyone. Thanks all. Good night.
Together we win.
Thanks, everyone.